Chapter Glossary. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Glossary A/N. Obviously, there's spoilers in here. Don't read it if you just started reading the novel. Terminology: hosts. Living beings of all races taken in from countless different worlds and realities by the system to nurture. They are each assigned a potential value ranging from F to S plus the moment they join and are made to participate in an initiation and a tutorial before being allowed to climb the plateaus. They all possess a status window, the ability to level up, and distribute attribute and skill points to grow stronger. Local. Living beings that were created by the system or were born in it. They do not possess the ability to manipulate their status like hosts do and can only train to achieve proficiencies and skills. Children born from locals and hosts are called descendants and share a host's privileges. Additionally, hosts have the special privilege to hand out quests to hosts of which the rewards will be provided by them: skills, items, money, titles, experience. Wilden. The name used to address the monsters birthed by the system. They all possess the ability to grow stronger with limited control over their status. They also are required to learn their abilities on their own, but they can be fostered to higher stages by becoming a host's pet. Plateaus. Pocket worlds that make the structure of the system. Each plateau has different characteristics, but it is only at every 5 plateaus that the landscape changes drastically, ranging from the plainest of meadows to the most barren of deserts. Talis. Currency used within the system by both locals and hosts. There exist 2 variations to it called Talis and Tur. The former is the currency used in the shops made exclusively for pet creatures, and the latter is the physical version of Talis, employed during special trades and when a local or host wishes to carry or stash their money. Trials. Tests that hosts must go through to promote from one plateau to another. These trials require to be completed within 3 years or else the host will be severely punished. Ordeals. Challenges randomly generated by the system. They include all sorts of tasks of which the completion will offer rewards depending on the host's performance. Dungeons. Structures with a varying number of floors, with each floor generally harder than the previous one. The last floor is where the boss awaits, and it is known that each dungeon has special hidden conditions to trigger a hidden boss. Bear in mind that monsters within are not considered wilden and can only vary in strength thanks to the difficulty chosen upon entry. Every time a dungeon is completed, it will resurrect every monster it held. Dungeon tiers. Occasionally, dungeons do not have a physical presence in a plateau and are located within a locked dimension. In which case, it can only be accessed through a dungeon tier, an oval dimensional portal. Reset. Every month, the system will conduct a reset on every plateau. Dungeons will change locations and parameters, ordeals will disappear and then be generated again, damages to the landscape will be fixed, corpses will be cleaned, Wilden will be repopulate if the count turns out to be too low, and other things might get deleted by the system due to their lack of usefulness for the host's growth. The only way to evade the reset is to claim land with rare items, and if a society is created, the reset will go through several criteria before deeming that place resourceful enough to be preserved. Dungeons, ordeals, trials that do not change after a reset are labeled as recurring. Pavilion. The most powerful organization in the system, originally founded by locals but eventually co-managed with hosts. They possess valuable members that made it an essential place for hosts to exchange their goods, buy or sell equipment, take on quests, and indirectly communicate with the system's core program on special occasions. It is also the only relay point to travel from one plateau to another. In the past, before its creation, only locals were able to ferry hosts across plateaus, and that became the main reason why the pavilion was created. Pavilions exist on every plateau and most towns and cities. However, on each plateau, there is a main pavilion built around a terminal, the access point of the system's inner workings. It can be accessed from any plateau through a dimensional link that connects them all. Item rarities: gray, green, blue, orange, purple, red, gold. Special cases. Exotic/unique path rarities: common, rare, epic, legendary, unique, special cases. Exotic skill ranks: normal, LV.110, ascended skill, LV.1120, demi, god skill, LV.2130, divine skill, LV.31. Dungeon difficulties: not all dungeons have the full selection. Easy, normal, hard, fiend, hell, fatal, pavilions. Honor ranks: bronze, steel, silver, gold, platinum, emerald, ruby, jade, diamond, ebene, dire. Special, wild and threat ranks: executioner, destroyer, calamity, disaster, annihilator, fatality. Chimera ranks: dread, lurid, nightmare, naraka, revelation. And attribute descriptions: STR, strength. The representation of muscle potency. Increasing strength can make you go faster on certain actions, strike harder, jump higher, and take hits a bit more easily. END, endurance. The representation of the gene's evolution. Increasing endurance greatly boosts stamina, healing factors, and defense. SPD, speed. The representation of movement speed. Increasing speed accumulates the mind to allow faster thought process to match the body's increased motor capabilities. DX, dexterity. The representation of body control. Dexterity is the pillar of agility but also allows significant stamina consumption reduction and accuracy. INT, intelligence. The representation of one's mental capacity. Increasing intelligence does not affect IQ but improves memory and minor comprehension abilities. It also reflects the base size of the mana pool and is the main focus of every mage. LCK, luck. The wild variable that cannot be predicted and increased by normal means. It has the power to bend fate and laws. Statistic descriptions: STA, stamina. Host's ability to retain and regain energy. STR plus SPD plus 2 END plus DX, MP, mana pool. The host's reserves of mana. 10 INT, SWI, swiftness. Host's thought processing speed. 2 SPD plus 2 INT, AGI, agility. Host's ability to dodge and skillfully manipulate momentum. SPD plus 2 DX, SEN, senses. Host's sensing ability, including the 5 senses and instinct. SPD plus END plus INT plus DX, ATC, ATR cap numeric value which represents the disposition to learn skills. Sum of all attributes, ATT, attack. Numeric value correlated to the host's attack power. STR *4 plus, END/2, plus DX plus SPD, def, defense. Numeric value representing the defensive power of the host. The difference between defense and attack varies the damage inflicted. STR plus 3 END, MA, magic attack. Numeric value representing the power of the host's base magic attack. INT *3, MR, MP regeneration. The rate at which the host's mana points recover. It is calculated through a factor, 0.1, that is innate to the host. MP/100 factor, record of magic spells, star spells. Hoarfrost star manifestation, T.0, Natkateram Karavu, T.2, Natkatira Vi.cci, T.4, Natkataram Cataract, T.5, Hoarfrost Blizzard, T.6, Natkatira Kiri.m, T.6, Natkataram Vi.untadu, T.6, Star Puppetry, T.10, T.1, Star Hearth, T.10, T.1, Star Monarch, T.10, T.1, Hoarfrost Mist, T.10, Aether Ion Fire/Fire Spells. Cremation Blade Burial, T. 4 Aether Ion Nova, T.5, Ersatz Nova, T.6, Aether Ion Eruption, LV.6, Fire Breath, T.7, Fire Shell, T.8, Crimson Ray, T.8, Fireball, T.10, Wood Magic Spells. Emerald Orb of Nidhogg, T.5, Deep Roots, T.7, Emergence, T.9, Eternal Night Spells. AE, Nitya Iravu, T.4, Aeterna, T.8.10, Shadow Spells. Iron Maiden, Wraith, T.7, Iron Maiden, T.8, Bird Cage, T.9, Myriad/Poison Spells. Bane of Atrophy, T.5, Goo, T.6, Salve of Myriad, T.7, Poison Arrow, T.8.6, Acidic Venom, T.9.6, Poison Fog, T.9.7, Paralyzing Fog, T.10.9, Infinity Spells equals Mana Excel, T.7, Kinetic Excel, T.8, Status Alteration, T.10, Void Spells. Void of Stillness, T.6, Wormhole, T.7, Void Ka.M, LV.8, Voiding Mantle, T.10.6, Gravity Spells. Apocalypse, T.8, Grav Array, T.9, Weight Alteration, T.10, Wind Spells. Wind Guard, T.8, Tempest, T.8, Jade Rouse, T.9, Wind Blade, T.10, Earth Spells. Mega Quake, T.6, Eruption, T.7, Earth Shell, T.8, Quake, T.9, Anchor, T.10, Spike, T.10, Barrier Magic. Momentum Barrier, T.7, Anti-Magic Barrier, T.7, Spatial Seal, T.8, Filter Gate, T.9, Anti-Sound Barrier, T.10, Light, Reflection Barrier, T.10, Hellblaze Spells. Sinful Grace, T.8, Devil's Arrow, T.9, Hell Requiem, T.9, Purgatory's Crypt, T.10.1, Curse Magic. Death Storm, T.5, Decrepit Terror, T.8, Red Plague, T.10, Abyss Magic. Oblivion, T.4, Drain, T.6, Warp, T.9, Null, T.10, Illusion Magic. Oasis, T.6, Faux Pas, T.8, Double, T.9, Projection, T.10, Snake Magic. Coiling Winged Serpent, T.7, Scaled Flood, LV.8, Sloth Magic. Path of Absolution, T.9, Frager Magic. Frager and Fractura, T.4, Fracto Groa, T.7, Fracto Des Mea, T.8, Chaos Spells. Fold Chaos, Perdured Annihilation, T.4, 3-fold Chaos, Rampant Mayhem, T.6, 2-fold Chaos, Pandemonium, T.7, Metal Magic. Impurity Filter, T.8, Alloy Shaping, T.9, Structural Grasp, T.10, Union Magic, Wind plus Snake, Wind Hoarder. Serpent of Tempest, T.7, Union Magic, Sloth plus Hoarfrost, Frosted Sloth. Niflhel, T.7, Tucumum, T.8, Mentioned Magics Only. Tail Magic, Dimensional Magic, Pill Magic, Processor Magic, Armor Magic, Science Magic, Gun Magic, Water Magic, Ice Magic, Lightning Magic, Death Magic, Darkness Magic, Light Magic, Blood Magic, Neutral Magic, Creation Magic, Destruction Magic, Union Magic, Dark Light. Extra terminology. Lexis. The name given to the words of power chanted to invoke magic. Call Lolly. A personal Lexis engraved on one's soul. Very few people ever learn it. When someone intones a line of their Call Lolly, their mana and soul power will temporarily go into overdrive to heighten performances. The average Call Lolly is an incantation with around 4 lines, and the more lines a Call Lolly has, the more can be read, and the stronger the effect is. Rachna's first Call Lolly. Hoarfrost Star, 9 lines, crystals of frost abide the star's wrath. Ought rhyme rip bones and flesh. In a fireless firmament, shall the star blister and flicker. In a lifeless perdition, the wolf growls and howls. In between the heights and depths lies the slumbering mayhem of the devourer. Bathing in blood and rattling death. Mocking fairness and gorging hearts. The one, they offer harvest. Rachna's second Call Lolly. Volcanic Star, 9 lines, embers of ardor abide the star's vehemence? Shall the fervor of Vulcan taste your flesh? In a burning firmament, the star has forgotten how to blink. In an eternal damnation, the wolf devours and howls. In between the lows and highs lies the incarnate mayhem of the devourer. Drowning in blood and colluding with death. Scorning fairness and obsessing over hearts. The one, they give harvest. Chapter Prologue. Pool of Blood. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Prologue. Pool of blood. White turned to black. Warm turned to cold. Smiles turned to lines. Tears turned to blood. I watched. Confused, alone, scared, lost. Then, something grabbed my hand. I looked down and saw my own arm being torn away. I cried in pain, but it was cut off short as something grabbed my other hand. Then, my legs, my eyes, my skin, my very bones, even my heart. I drowned in blood. Stop. Stop. Stop it. Stop it. I screamed and opened my eyes. My ragged breath caught up with me and I started coughing. With sweat covering nearly my entire body, I panted and looked around. The familiar room gradually calmed me down and I sighed as I pushed my fingers through my hair. The face reflected by the mirror in the corner of the room was back to normal. The face that I got used to see. No emotion, no nothing. I glanced at the hour on the clock and slowly got out of bed. I quickly changed my clothes and I grabbed the bag on the floor before leaving the room. As I was heading to the front door, I placed a cigarette in my mouth and lit it. I placed my hand on the door handle and looked at a picture resting on the small table to my right. "I'm out, bold man," I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. I opened the door and left. Chapter 1. The first step. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A young man with black hair was lying down on top of a high school's roof. His unnatural, but stunning purple eyes were focused on the many holographic news that were projected by the drones that flew above the city. He wore black pants and a black leather jacket over a white shirt. He seemed to be around 18 years old, but everything about him exuded a mature feeling. His body was evidently fit and his facial features were sharp whilst being very dismal at the same time. Overall, no one could deny the fact that he was good looking. His expression though appeared cold and uninterested. But that was one of the small details that only accentuated his unique looks. At some point, he chose to close his eyes to rest even though the bell was ringing throughout the entire school. The clouds drifted by very slowly and some rays of light would occasionally illuminate the teen's figure. Then, a hiss abruptly sounded near his ear. The boy's eyes shot open as he propped his body up. He jumped on his feet and spontaneously performed a series of acrobatics to get away from his initial position. He looked at where he was before with an almost invisible frown on his face. "Where do you come from?" he uttered as he stared at what suddenly disrupted his peace. It was shockingly a snake. A white snake that was approximately 1 meter long. The snake had very thick scales. In fact, half of its body was covered by those oddly thick scales while the rest was shining white skin. The animal hissed again, showing its sharp fangs. It glared at the human in front of it with palpable anger and apprehension expressed by its light blue eyes. The teen scowled at the sight. He then remembered one particular news he had seen earlier. One about an experimental lab that accidentally let loose some experiments. "Really?" the high schooler muttered. "I can't recognize its race, but if this one is poisonous, it's a huge issue that shouldn't be broadcasted so casually." He slowly started walking toward the snake. Surprisingly, the animal retreated a little and seemed to be cowering a bit. This was something that surprised the young man again. Fear. On top of anger, huh? He mumbled and stopped his advance. "Hey," he called. Even he had to admit it was a bit far-fetched, but he felt like he had to try. "Do you understand me?" The snake visibly trembled when it heard him, which affirmed the teen's assumptions. "Come here, I won't hurt you," he said, and the snake hissed again. On the bright side though, it wasn't as loud as before. Trust me. Some may have hurt you before, but I won't do the same," he added. Though, his expression and tone were so monotonous that the snake seemed to have a hard time deciding if it should believe him or not. Only after a full minute did the white reptilian crawl toward the teen. The latter crouched and carefully grabbed the snake before lifting it up to match his sight. He then gazed at the small snake's eyes. Yes. There's emotion in that look. I wonder what they did to you to give you intelligence. Are you a subject that survived the Zira project? He whispered, dispassionately referencing to something that obviously shouldn't be known to the general public. The reptilian's slit pupils had narrowed even more. If the human were to try something funny, it was prepared to bite him in the neck within the split of a second. Rachna. The teen who heard his name being shouted by an all too familiar voice slightly cringed, but it could barely be perceived. In contrast, the snake obviously panicked and coiled around Rachna's neck in a vain attempt to hide from whoever was coming. Someone then opened the door to the roof with a loud bam and proceeded to glare at the boy who was previously trying to sleep on the most elevated section of the roof. It was a woman wearing a beige sweater and a gray skirt that stepped through the door. She was fairly tall, although not as much as Rachna, who seemed to be around 1.8 meters tall. She had long curly brown hair and hazel eyes. She wore no makeup and showed off her natural beauty. Her figure was also extraordinary, and even Rachna couldn't help but praise her, especially her chest. "Oh, good afternoon, Flavia," Rachna looked at her and waved his hand. "It's Miss Gina. How cold of you. You call me well, Rachna. Why can't I do the same?" Rachna cynically shook his head and replied with his usual aloof and indifferent voice. Flavia was obviously used to his behavior and ignored it right away. "That's not the point. How many times must I tell you to not come to the roof using my key? That you keep stealing on top of that. Do you know how many problems I go, T?" Her voice faded at the end of her sentence as she noticed something. She blinked and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Rachna." "Yes. What is that around your neck?" "Well, a snake." "Care to explain?" "Explain what?" "Take a guess." Sorry, I don't know why this fellow has such white scales and skin." "That's not what I'm asking." The woman teacher snapped again and sighed. "Why are you carrying a snake around? I hope for you he's non-venomous." "Don't blame me. I didn't bring him here," Rachna retorted and glanced at the reptilian, which also looked back at him. "I was trying to get some sleep when I heard his hiss next to my ears. Then, I saw him." Flavia frowned. "Where does he come from?" "Well, I have an assumption." Rachna was interrupted by a sudden tremor. His eyes widened and Flavia leaned against the wall to stabilize herself. Her expression paled when she saw the roof and walls of the school fissuring. Rachna almost couldn't believe his eyes. The walls fissured. How? All of the school's foundations were reinforced by Aurora. Nothing can easily break what they make. Even the snake seemed to be shocked by the unpredictable natural disaster and the damages it caused. What is happening? An earthquake. Flavia bellowed with a hint of panic in her voice. In contrast, Rachna kept his cool and crouched whilst using his right hand to keep his balance. "Don't be stupid. The whole city is supported and monitored by ion equipment. An earthquake can not only be predicted but also prevented. I don't know why this is happening, but this normally shouldn't last." Flavia calmed herself when she heard his self-assured tone, but before she could say anything else, the sky darkened and the high school was covered in shadows. The students started looking at what was happening through the windows. It was then that the clouds gradually got illuminated by a crimson light. Afterward, a cylindrical red barrier fell from within the clouds and bordered the school's premise with a huge quake. Flavia gasped and the floor beneath suddenly cracked and collapsed. She yelped and lost her footing. The whole building structure actually tilted and she was in danger of falling. Flavia. Ragnar raised his voice with a startling sense of urgency. Flavia had rarely ever heard him express so much emotion. He jumped down in her direction but was forced to stop because of a hole that opened right in front of him. The foundations of the building collapsed and screams resounded across the entire school. Ragnar clicked his tongue and the white snake who was literally now stuck to him put its head inside his scarf in fright. Flavia, hold on to the cracks and don't try to go back inside. We have higher chances to survive if we stay here. At least the roof won't fall on our heads. Also, take off your shoes, you don't want your heels to get stuck somewhere, Ragnar said as his voice recovered its usual poise, seeing that the shaking had slightly weakened and the roof was not breaking further. Flavia nodded gravely and followed his advice. Ragnar looked around whilst keeping an eye on her, ready to jump if needed. He noticed that the red barrier that was surrounding the school had thickened and he couldn't see beyond anymore. It was as if the school had been isolated from the rest of the world. I'd need to be delusional to think this is something made by humans, Ragnar voiced just before Flavia groaned and fell on her knees. She was clutching her head with her hands and seemed to be experiencing some atrocious pain. Ragnar was about to run to her even if it meant that he would make the rest of the roof collapse when he also froze and grunted as he kneeled on one leg. He was assaulted by a massive headache out of nowhere. Even the small snake wasn't spared as it hissed weakly. Ragnar tried his best to remain conscious as he forced his eyelids to stay open. Through his narrowed vision, he saw Flavia fainting as she fell backward. If he didn't move, she would fall off the roof. Wake up, wake up, wake up, he kept reiterating inwardly as time seemed to slow down around him. Wake up. He opened his eyes wide and his eyes gained a shade of red. His expression twisted and his indifference disappeared. It was replaced by pure fury, frustration, and an off-putting in faint amusement. His mouth formed a sneer as he kicked the ground. He ignored the collapsing floor or the holes in his path, he leaped over them and even risked to use unstable footholds. As he made his final leap, he outstretched his hand, grabbed the edge of a pit that had formed near Flavia's unconscious body. His hand started bleeding but he just snorted and pulled himself up with one arm. He grabbed his teacher and put her over his shoulder. He waited until the entire school began to break apart. He made sure to dodge any glass, rock, or metal rod that could hurt him, all while fighting the headache trying to split his brain. He jumped again at the very last moment before everything crashed on the ground. He spun in the air and used his own body to shield Flavia as he hit the ground. He definitely heard something break inside his body. When he had safely landed, the rest of the building collapsed around him. Luckily, not any large debris fell on them. Ragnar coughed because of the dust and blood swelling up in his throat. He swallowed and growled in infuriation. He checked on Flavia then scoffed. Damn it, woman. I won't do this again, he spat as his eyes returned to normal and his brain finally shut down. Chapter 2. Assessment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ragnar woke up and promptly propelled himself to his feet. His eyes looked right and left and his body tensed. His mouth was forming a flat line as he inspected his surroundings. He still had a headache but he completely ignored it. Shit, he cursed as he confirmed some things. First of all, Flavia was nowhere to be seen. He was sure that he had managed to save her, so he decided to put that in the back of his mind for now. The next thing confused him to no end. He was back on the roof somehow and the school was totally undamaged. And lastly, Ragnar neared the edge of the roof and looked forward. Trees. An immense forest extended around the school grounds and continued until a chain of mountains. He was about to go down and check to see if there was someone else in the building when the headache suddenly returned full force. He grunted and rubbed his temple. Then, it happened. Host has awakened. Finalizing download. His expression twitched as he heard a mechanical voice speak in his head. Assessing beginning. Host woke up 30 minutes after the dimensional transfer, noted. Host shows aptitude for several unique skills and traits, noted. Host displays status several times higher than the average human, noted. Host proves to have considerable self-control and mind fortitude, noted. Host possesses extended knowledge and experience, noted. Graded. Rachna frowned and a whistling slowly crept into his ears. He did his best to ignore it to hear what the voice said afterward. Host's potential value. S+. Commencing necessary upgrades. That's the last thing the voice said before getting quiet. Rachna combed his hair with his hand. What the heck is going on? He muttered and noticed something moving around under his scarf. He pulled on it and ended up looking at a certain snake in the eyes. The human and reptilian stared at each other for a few seconds before Rachna grabbed the ladder and put it on the ground. He crouched and mused. Hey, little guy, did you also hear some voice speaking in your head? The snake tilted its head and nodded. I see. What rank did it give you? The snake seemed to ponder for a moment before using its tail to draw a letter on the ground. Rachna hummed when he finished. S, huh. What does this mean in the end? Right on cue, the infuriating whistling came back and a new voice echoed in his head. The same thing happened for the little snake apparently. The update has been successfully completed. A woman's voice echoed. Rachna's eyes widened in surprise. It was no longer robotic and emotionless. While it still lacked the natural warmth of a human, this time it didn't sound unnatural nor was it off-putting. In fact, it was a bit soothing. It's an honor to meet you, Rachna Ziora. I'm the S+ class AI that has been chosen to guide you through the system. AI. Care to explain what you mean by system? Certainly. And with that, a column of words abruptly filled Rachna's vision. Host. Rachna Ziora age. 17 level. 1 race. Male human title. Nil potential. S+ attributes. Strength. 1.9 endurance. 2.5 speed. 2 dexterity. 4 intelligence. 3.6 luck. 9 available points. 2 statistics. Stamina. 12.9/12.9 MP 36 swiftness. 11.2 agility. 10 senses. 24.20 ATR cap 23 attack. 14.9 defense. 9.4 magic attack. 10.8 MP regen. 0.25 per minute proficiencies. Polearm mastery, LV.8. Plus 16% attack when wielding polearms. Taekwondo, LV.7. Plus 14%, dagger mastery, LV.7. Plus 14%, cooking, LV.6. Plus 60% change to cook a dish with special effects. Karate, LV.6. Plus 12%, throwing, LV.6. Plus 12%, judo, LV.6. Plus 12%, taijutsu, LV.5. Plus 10%, marksmanship, LV.5. Plus 10%. Magic skills. Unawakened cognitive skills, passive. Pain, resistance, LV max, fear, resistance, LV max, eye of the mind, LV max, fatigue resistance, LV 7, spontaneous skills, active. None nirvana skills. Unknown unique or racial traits. Ion auto, sustainable nanomachines. Automatically kills foreign organisms and allows rapid improvement of body strength as well as the use of more muscle cells. Ragnar swiftly analyzed the information in front of him. Is this a joke? You're not telling me I was pulled into a sort of game, are you? Negative. You're correct in thinking this is a game. Ragnar scowled. Whose? I cannot answer this question. You can't. Or you won't. I do not know the answer, host. Ragnar rubbed his temples. Fine, what is the purpose of this game then? I do not know. Really? Yes. But I can tell you what you are going through as we speak. Go ahead. Please turn around and look at the gates of your school. Ragnar silently complied and the small snake followed him. He squinted his eyes and stared at the gates that were nearly 200 meters away. His eyes gradually widened as he spotted several shadows emerging from the woods. Those are, he inspected their appearance and his eye twitched. Kobolds. Affirmative. They are commonly called as such. The initiation will now begin, host. I'm here if you have questions. Initiation mission. Survive. Description. Monsters are invading your location, searching for anything to scavenge. If they find you, they'll kill you. Objective. Survive until the end of the day. Note. You can hide but you also can strike back. Tracker. 50-50 enemies alive. Rewards. Will change according to the host's performance. Well, damn, Ragnar pondered. For now, give me a description of each attribute. Certainly. Attributes. Strength. The representation of muscle potency. Increasing strength can make you go faster, strike harder, jump higher, and take hits a bit more easily. Endurance. The representation of the gene's evolution. Increasing endurance greatly boosts stamina, healing factors, and defense. Speed. The representation of movement speed. Increasing speed accumulates the mind to allow a faster thought process to match the leg's increased motor capabilities. Dexterity. The representation of body control. Dexterity is the pillar of agility but also allows significant stamina consumption reduction and accuracy improvement. Intelligence. The representation of one's mental capacity. Increasing intelligence does not affect IQ but improves memory and minor comprehension abilities. It also reflects the base size of the mana pool and is the main focus of every mage. Luck. The wild variable that cannot be predicted and increased by normal means. It has the power to bend fate and laws. Statistics. Stamina. Host's ability to retain and regain energy, STR plus SPD plus 2 * end plus dex. MP host's mana pool, 10 * int. Swiftness. Host's thought processing speed, 2 * SPD plus 2 * int. Agility. Host's ability to dodge and skillfully manipulate momentum, SPD plus 2 * dex. Senses. Host's sensing ability, including the 5 senses and instinct, SPD plus N plus int plus dex. ATR cap. Numeric value that represents the disposition to learn skills, sum of all attributes. Attack. Numeric value representing the power of the host's attack. STR * 4 plus N/2 plus dex plus SPD, defense. Numeric value representing the defensive power of the host. The difference between defense and attack varies the damage inflicted. STR plus 3 * end, magic attack. Numeric value representing the power of the host's base magic attack, int *3, MP regeneration. The rate at which the host's mana points recover. It is calculated through a factor that is innate to the host. Current factor. 0.7, MP/100 * 0.7. Ragnar frowned as he looked over the descriptions. First of all, he realized that it would be quite complicated to make a build since the way the stats were calculated was relatively complex and required a minimum of thought. But at the same time, everything was quite balanced. The paths were varied but very straightforward as well. Though, why does my sense stat not match with the calculation method? Instead of answering, the AI showed him the box of his cognitive skills. Pain, resistance, LV max. Skill quantifying how much pain the host can ignore and move regardless of damage. Fear, resistance, LV max. Skill quantifying resistance against any kind of intimidation. Eye of the mind, LV max. A rare skill, even rarer to see reaching the higher levels, that sharpens the host's instincts to inhuman levels. Those that are born with this skill are considered geniuses among geniuses. They can adapt and learn with nothing but instinct. Additional effect. Permanent 100% increase to senses. Fatigue resistance, LV, 7. Skill quantifying resistance against any sort of tiredness, physical fatigue, mental fatigue, mana fatigue, etc. I see, Rachna muttered. He decided to ignore the skills listed as unknown or unawakened for now. He then thought about the 2 attribute points he had. He had no idea how he would develop in the future, so he held on to them for now. He mused and settled down on the roof to observe the kobolds entering the school grounds. For some reason, he felt like he could see better than he ever had. Hey, AI, how should I call you? I'm AI.00000056.lts. Too many zeros. I'll just call you Alexa. Now, tell me, did the download of this system somehow correct my attributes? Affirmative. To quantify an individual's abilities and translate them into numbers, it is imperative to round them up. Your eye of the mind is a special case as well since its effects have been activated the moment the system was downloaded. So, you are correct to assume to be stronger now. Albeit it's only by a relatively small amount. Got it, he replied impassively and started analyzing the enemies he was going to fight. Because, yes, he was going to kill them. I'm not going to hide after all that training I was put through by the old man, he thought. Kobolds. Were dogs in a sense, Rachna mumbled while staring at them. Considering their armor and weaponry, I'd say they have decent intellect. They seemingly have 4 fingers. Probably making their dexterity lower than the average human and more akin to lose their weapons. From what I can see, they have a basic military pyramid. Most of them wear gray leather armor while some of them have metal parts along with it. And if they're not dogs just for show, they should have a pretty high sense of smell. Troublesome, ding. He was suddenly thrown out of his thoughts by a sound and a window appearing in front of him. Thanks to your remarkable insight and through meeting several conditions, you have learned a new skill, appraisal. Appraisal, LV.1. A skill sought by many but hard to attain because of its harsh requirements. Allows the host to inspect a living being's status and learn about their characteristics. At the initial levels, the displayed information depends on the caster's wisdom. Cost. None. Rachna snorted. Useful thing. Wisdom, huh? An attribute that can't be modified by the system. I guess this means that appraisal will show me what I would have roughly been capable of finding out by myself, but instantly. At least at level 1. Am I right, Alexa? Indeed, host. Call me Rachna. Host feels weird. Noted, Rachna. Good, now let's try this. He looked at the kobolds. Appraisal. Name. None age. 5 level. 3 race. Kobold attributes. Strength. 1.5 endurance. 2 speed. 2 dexterity. 0.8 intelligence. 0.6 luck. 1 weapon. Crude short spear. Plus 10 attack armor. Leather armor. Plus 5 defense statistics. Stamina. 8.3/8.3 MP 6/6 swiftness. 5.2 agility. 3.6 senses. 10.4 ATR cap 7.9 attack. 20, 10 plus 10, defense. 12.5, 7.5 plus 5, magic attack. 1.8 MP regen. 0.01 per minute proficiencies. Polearm, mastery, LV.1, unique or racial traits. Dog nose. Plus 5 senses. As expected, higher senses, lower dexterity. I outclassed them in everything but speed, Rachna muttered, then felt something pulling on his pants. He looked down and saw the little snake slithering around his feet. What's wrong, little guy? He crouched and his answer came to him under the form of a notification box. Iron Snake LV.1 wishes to be your contracted pet. Do you accept? Rachna's eyes widened a bit. Iron Snake. So, you really are a survivor of the Zira project. But why do you want to make a contract with me? Are you sure that you can trust me? The snake lowered its head and hissed weakly. Rachna swore he could hear an "I'm not good enough" invading his mind while looking at the little snake. He ultimately accepted the request. You have taken Iron Snake LV.1 as your pet. Please give him a name to finalize the contract. Rachna gazed at the little snake before deciding on a name. Pronos. Your name will be Pronos. You're okay with it? He asked, and the snake perked up before nodding several times. Contract sealed. You have now access to Pronos status. Name. Pronos Master. Rachna Ziora. Age. 3 level. 1 race. Iron Snake title. Nil potential. S attributes. Strength. 1 endurance. 5 speed. 1.2 dexterity. 0.6 intelligence. 2.7 luck. 3 available points. 2 statistics. Stamina. 19.2/19.2 MP 40.5/40.5 swiftness. 7.8 agility. 2.4 senses. 9.5 ATR cap 13.5 attack. 8.3 defense. 19.2 magic attack. 8.1 MP regen. 0.2 per minute proficiencies. Bite, LV max. Plus 100% attack when biting. Grapple strangle, LV max. Plus 20% attack magic skills. Unawakened. Cognitive skills, passive. Poison resistance, LV X, pain resistance, LV X, fear resistance, LV 5, fatigue resistance, LV 3, spontaneous skills, active. Poison secretion, LV.7. Allows the host to produce poison from their fangs. Camouflage, LV.8. Once activated, changes the skin and scales color of the host to match the surroundings. Unique or racial traits. Iron scales. Plus 20% defense. Iron poison. Poison secretion can produce iron poison. Iron blood. 50% increase to MP and stamina. Night vision. Light amplified sight. Thermal vision. Infrared sight. Echo vision. Sight acquired through sound feedback. That's a lot of traits. You're one hell of a snake. You have attributes on par with a grown human. You can also take hits like a tank, and you're an incredible threat as an assassin too, Rachna exclaimed, honestly impressed. Pronos straightened his body and pulled the corner of his lips, effectively making him look smug. Rachna snorted and grabbed him before putting him on his shoulder. Pronos circled his neck once before snuggling inside his scarf, with just his head sticking out. Ragna looked down at the kobolds again before walking toward the door on the roof. Alexa, do I get a beginner kit or something? You have the permission to choose a weapon of your liking, Ragna. Before he could ask her to clarify, dozens of white shapes formed around him, floating and spinning. Each shape represented a weapon and there were all kinds. Swords, bows, guns, spears, chains, scythes, gauntlets, brass knuckles, etc. Ragna mused. I'm certainly most proficient with the glaive, but I don't really need it since I already have one, he muttered vaguely. But it's not practical to use a polearm if I ever have to fight indoors. Plus, I can't possibly fight all 50 at the same time. Having made his decision, Ragna reached for a serrated dagger. The shapes immediately disappeared and the dagger he chose fell in his hands. The blade was thick and entirely red. A window popped up the moment he touched it. Designation. Blade/dagger name. Blood Fang, imitation, rarity. Green attack power. Plus 20 durability. Infinite description. A low-grade imitation of a legendary dagger supposedly crafted with a fang of Ambrogio, the first vampire. Note. This weapon is exclusive to the initiation and will disappear upon exit. I see. At least, they're not petty with the starting weapons, Ragna commented. The attack power correlates to one's defense, right? If it's not high enough, no damage would be done or it would just be very weak. By the way, Alexa, there's no HP in your system. Health points are an aberration and are not included in the system. No matter what, if a host suffers a deadly blow, they will die unless they have a skill or a racial trait to counter it. The same rule applies to monsters generated by the system. The defense attribute merely represents one's body resistance, it has nothing to do with health. Similarly, defense granted by armor, unless magical, will only apply to the body part covered by said equipment. Ragna hummed and whirled the dagger in his hand. Good to know, he said and opened the door leading to the floor below. It means that this game is fair play. I stab, they die. I like it, he quipped, but his look sharpened and turned cold. Let's see how these puppies fare. Chapter 3. The Azure Sonata. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Going down the stairs, Ragna mulled over how he could bypass the kobold's sense of smell. The sounds of his footsteps echoed for a minute before he finally decided on his next course of action. He exited the staircase on the second floor of the building and quietly made his way toward his classroom. He asked Alexa and she told him that the state of the school was the exact same as it was before the transfer, personal objects included. When he opened the door, Ragna spotted his bag and pulled two things out of it. One was a peculiar silver cigarette case. He put one roll up between his lips and lit it with the case itself, which surprisingly had an integrated lighter in a corner. He inhaled once and huffed a cloud of smoke before reaching for the second thing, a military Swiss knife. The actual knife was of pretty good quality, but that's not what Ragna wanted it for. He ejected one of the many integrated tools and went toward the lockers of his classmates. He picked them open and searched the items inside. He did that for a dozen lockers or so before stopping. Ultimately, he ended up with around 5 deodorizers on one of the desks of the room. This should be more than enough, he muttered and huffed a bit of smoke. Pronos tilted his head in confusion as he watched his newfound master's actions. Ragna picked one of the deodorizers and started spraying it throughout the room. He spent the following 10 minutes emptying 4 of them, not only in his classroom but also a huge chunk of the floor and himself. After all of that, the air was barely breathable, but Ragna ignored it. Okay, he sighed and extinguished his cigarette. He then grabbed a random chair and threw it at a window of the corridor. However, it just bounced on the glass and fell on the floor. Even Pronos didn't know what to think. Right, this is reinforced glass, Ragna commented and opened the window with a poker face as if nothing had happened and threw the chair again. This time it crashed and broke apart loudly on the ground outside. Every kobold instantly heard it and looked toward the source. Ragnar stuck his head out of the window and waved at them. Come at me," he said more or less loudly, and the monster started marching in his direction. I guess that worked. He then quickly grabbed his bag and rushed toward the main staircase, which he had already filled with the scent of one of the deodorizers. He crouched on a shadowy corner slightly above the floor he was in and simply waited. He could already hear the sounds of footsteps and some growls coming from below. It took around a minute before he saw the first kobold arrive. The dog creature wheezed when it sniffed the air and scrunched up its nose. Ragnar silently watched as more arrived. As he expected, and fortunately, not all of them had come to search this floor. There were around 10 of them, and amongst the group, there was what appeared to be a sort of platoon leader barking orders at the others. Ragnar couldn't understand any of it, since it was plenty evident that he hadn't magically gained the talent to understand dog speech. Ragnar decided to move when the kobolds had dispersed and only one remained in front of the stairs. He breathed in and carefully approached the back of the oblivious animal. He readied Blood Fang and, when he was in range, shut the kobold's muzzle with one hand and slit its throat with the other. LV.3 Kobold killed. Requirements for level up updated. Kill the equivalent of 10 levels to level up. Current progress. March 10th. The kobold died with widened eyes and a very suppressed whimper. Ragnar grunted and grabbed the body before it could fall on the ground. He temporarily dismissed the system window and gazed at his blood-stained hand. "I admit, this isn't pleasant. I forgot how it felt after these last few years," he groused inwardly. He didn't feel regret for having taken the life of his enemy nor disgust for the blood he had on his hands. Emotionally speaking, he was completely fine. But his rational mind was screaming at him, telling him that he had just killed, that he should be feeling sorry. No matter if it was a kobold or whatever else. It was like his mind was having an internal war and he hated it. He then remembered something his uncle once told him during his training. "You want to know how it is to kill? Depends. I think it's fun. Because it usually means a job done," he had said while laughing, and Ragnar had glared at him. "Oh, you were serious? Well, there isn't really an answer to that. If you kill for a cause or even by mistake, you can either rejoice or regret. But, never forget this. Those who suffer nothing at the moment of the kill are scum. If you can't respect life in any way, shape, or form, you are trash. You can wash the blood, but you can never forget its color. If you're worried about this, do not. I know well that you don't disregard the potential of life. Never change that, kiddo." Ragnar sighed and shook his head. His carefree uncle's words had always been so casual but equally significant. Pronos looked at him with a concerned look, and Ragnar patted his head once to tell him he was okay. He then looked at the window from earlier. "So, it's not EXP but level measures. To be sure, Alexa, if I hypothetically kill a LV.7 creature right now, would I level up?" "Affirmative. However, keep in mind that killing foes below your own level will give less points, and those more than 10 levels below yours will give nothing. But there are exceptions, of course. For instance, if you kill a LV.7 creature right now, the level difference will grant you a bonus." "Interesting," Ragnar mused and then carefully peeked in the corridor. 3 kobolds were walking around and the rest was apparently ransacking the rooms, considering the noises he was hearing. "Pronos," he whispered, and the little snake stuck his head out of his scarf. "Take care of the one on the far right, then come back right away." Pronos nodded promptly. He ejected himself out of the scarf and quietly slithered toward his target. Meanwhile, Ragnar grabbed his 2 knives and waited for the right moment. Pronos slowly approached the kobold while keeping an eye on the 2 others. Once he was close enough, he jumped on the creature and coiled around its neck before strangling and biting it. His fangs released a blue dot-colored poison. The kobold whimpered as its veins started glowing blue. Its neck heated up before it died with its flesh downright burned. At the same time, Rachna threw the Swiss knife at one of the other two and rushed toward the last one, plunging blood falling in its neck. When he pulled out his serrated dagger, both kobolds fell on the ground at the same time. Rachna couldn't think much of his victory. He quickly retrieved his knives and grabbed Pronos before bolting out of there. Within a few seconds, 6 very angry dogs were snarling and chasing him. "Well, this is fun," Rachna deadpanned. "I never was good for discretion anyway." He inhaled and rushed toward an opened window. He placed his foot on the ledge and unhesitatingly jumped. He extended his arm and gripped the ledge of the window above him before pulling himself up in a swift motion. He whirled blood fong in his hand and broke the window's lock with the blade. He then pushed it open before slipping inside the building's floor. When he was back inside, he sighed. "If there's one thing the old man told me to imperatively learn, it's parkour," he muttered and looked around. "They should be coming soon. The lab should be on this floor." Rachna kicked the ground and looked out for the correct door. When he found it, he immediately tried to open it. He clicked his tongue when he realized that it was closed. He rolled his eyes and took a few steps back. "Okay," he exhaled and hopped before unleashing a kick against the door. The lock and hinges didn't even resist for a second as the door fell on the floor. Rachna grunted as he felt the numbing sensation coming up his leg. He grabbed Pronos and placed him on the ground. "Little guy, can you keep watch for me?" The snake nodded and Rachna entered the lab. He walked toward the drawers and closets and searched their content. He grabbed a few chemical components and mused. "Well, this is definitely better than some sprayers," he uttered and took out a Bunsen. "It shouldn't be impossible with these ingredients," he muttered after mixing the basic chemical compounds, including sulfur, then started searching for something else. "Where did they put the liquid hydrogen? I thought they had gotten some for some club project or whatever," he grumbled as he looked through a closet when he heard Pronos hiss. He frowned and went to the door. Without peeking, he focused and tried to hear the sounds. He caught some footsteps as well as some barking coming from the stairs. No choice. "Pronos, get inside. Don't let them see you," he whispered and continued to look through the room. Finally, he found what he wanted just in time. He grabbed the hermetic container and quickly finished his concoction. "Well, at least, I didn't kill myself doing this," Rachna mumbled and Pronos looked at him with round eyes. "It's nothing, little guy." He shook the closed container a few times until the contents started showing signs of evaporating and of building pressure inside. Rachna grunted. It won't last long, he thought, then heard the kobolds approaching. He took 2 other chemical reagents and mixed them together. The result started producing smoke and he proceeded to uncover the first concoction while holding his breath and peeked out of the lab. Time to bail out. Fast, Rachna grabbed Pronos again and just like before, exited the room through the window before closing it behind him. After that, the problem was that there was nothing to latch on above him and there were probably other kobolds coming up on the second floor. "Pronos, can you slither up to the roof?" The little snake nodded and crawled on the wall vertically as if it was the easiest thing ever. "Yeah, definitely an iron snake," Rachna commented inwardly and looked around. He then reached for his scarf and slowly got it off. He took out his cigarette case from his pocket and pressed it against the scarf before triggering the lighter inside. A blue light suddenly pulsed on the scarf and spread throughout the fabric. Rachna felt the soft material become firm as it wriggled. The blue glow receded after a few seconds when the scarf had completely transformed. Rachna now held in his hand a long polearm. The shaft was dark blue, almost resembling lapis lazuli. Just prior to the blade, there was a light blue ribbon wrapped around it. The blade itself was also azure. It was thick-looking and one-edged as well as serrated on the backside. In other words, it looked like a very fancy guandao, also known as a glaive in Europe. Rachna wielded it like a whirlwind and cracked his neck. Firstly, He took the highest elevation he could while stepping on the window he was on, then took out Blood Fong before planting it in the wall. "This is gonna be tough," he muttered. "Alexa, assign 1 free point to dexterity." Acknowledged. Ragnar promptly felt his limbs get lighter and easier to control. He inhaled and pushed himself up with his hand holding onto Blood Fong. He repeated the motion a few times before doing it one final time at full force. He let go of the knife and his waist managed to go above it. Within that same time frame, he had gotten close enough to the barrier enclosing the roof. He reared his polearm and thrust it between the ground and the barrier so that it would get stuck. Ragnar immediately held onto it when he was about to fall. That was risky, he grunted and lifted himself up. Though, he didn't go to the roof yet, but revolved around the spear's shaft and hanged from it with his feet to reach for Blood Fong below. Then, he acrobatically climbed back to stand on the spear. He gripped the barrier, pulled his spear out, and climbed over it to finally land on the roof. "What a pain," Ragnar muttered and lit a cigarette. He huffed a puff of smoke and planted his spear in the concrete before taking a look at its attributes. Designation: Blade/Guandao name. Azure Sonata rarity. Blue attack power. Plus 50 durability. 100/100, can auto-repair, perks. Intertwined miniature ion systems. The weapon possesses memory of form and is able to switch from one form to another with an ion energy influx as the trigger. Currently available. Scarf, Guandao. Ion energy production. The weapon constantly generates energy and is incidentally able to regenerate the systems composing it with time. Oscillation blade, bladed form only. Through oscillation, the blade becomes 10 times sharper and can generate heat. Description: a masterpiece forged by a master blacksmith, the Earth Conqueror himself, with the technology of an advanced civilization. It was given to Ragnar Ziora as a gift by the one who bears the name of Blade. Note: evolvable. Chapter 4. Industry. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ragnar nodded in satisfaction when he read the attributes of Azure Sonata. This weapon was a gift from his uncle for having completed his training. Kronos made a full circle around the blade of the spear with wide, curious eyes. Ragnar snorted and grabbed the shaft with 2 hands before twisting it. The entire frame of the weapon crumbled and glowed before turning back into a scarf which he calmly put back around his neck. The old man really outdid himself with this one, Ragnar inwardly thought. No one would believe me if I told them this was made by a 100-year-old geezer. Anyway, he muttered and leaned over the roof rail a bit. He could hear the kobolds huffing and coughing. The gas is working pretty well. I wanted to make it similar to hydrogen sulfide, but I kind of just mixed whatever toward the end. Kronos stared at his new master with a deadpan face. What? Why are you looking at me like that? As long as it works. Let me live with that satisfaction. Do I look like I major in chemistry? Ragnar said dully. Anyway, should be soon. 3, 2, 1. What followed couldn't be called a blast or an explosion. A heat wave was briefly released, but there was no sound of anything breaking. Similarly, for the detonation, it couldn't actually be called one. It sounded like a very muffled but loud gunshot. Ragnar managed to see a few flames, but they disappeared as soon as he blinked. Then, a few prompts from the system immediately appeared in the corner of his vision. LV.3 Kobold killed. 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 LV.5 Elite Kobold killed. Level up. S plus rank. Plus 3 free points. Requirement for level up updated. Kill the equivalent of 20 levels to level up again. Current progress. 19/20. Ragnar rolled his eyes when he saw he needed one more point to level up. He had played RPGs before of course, and that was such a sickening feeling to see your experience at the edge of a level up. Anyway, looks like it worked quite well, he uttered and looked at Pronos. What about you, little guy? Did you level up? I'm not sure if you receive points from my kills. Alexa. A contracted pet unconditionally receives half of the experience points the master earns unless the pet has participated in the battle or the process to deal with the enemy or quest. In that case, it can vary from 50% to 100%. However, what a pet earns alone isn't shared with the master. I see, so you must be level 2 as well, Rachna said, and Pronos nodded while hissing softly. For now, it seems we will only receive free points. Feel free to use yours however you want. I'm not a snake, you know better than me to choose your path. After saying that, Rachna looked at his own stats before asking something to Alexa again. Can I distribute my points as decimals? Affirmative. Then assign 1.1 to strength, 1 to speed, 1 to dexterity, 0.5 to endurance, and 0.4 to intelligence, Rachna ordered, and instantly felt his body suffer some changes. He felt a fair amount of pain, but it wasn't something that could bother him, and he simply relaxed his body during the process. He calmly watched as his muscles contracted and his veins bulged from his hands until his shoulders. Augmentation finalized. Rachna sighed and glanced at Pronos, who had also assigned his points. Name. Pronos Master. Rachna Ziora. Age. 3 level. 2, 3 out of 10, race. Iron Snake title. Nil potential. S attributes. Strength. 1 endurance. 5. 6.5 speed. 1.2. For dexterity. 0.6. 1 intelligence. 2.7. 3 luck. 3 available points. 0 statistics. Stamina. 28.5 MP 45/45 swiftness. 14 agility. 6 senses. 14.5 ATR cap 18.5 attack. 12.3 defense. 24.6 magic attack. 9 MP regen. 0.23 per minute. I see. A swift tank. This is not bad at all. He can rely on his poison to deal damage for now. His speed will allow him to quickly go from one target to another while remaining undetected, while his defense will most likely keep him safe from area of effect attacks, which I fully believe exist, Rachna thought before looking down toward the schoolyard. He could see a few kobolds going in and out of the different buildings. How should I continue? If I had a long-range weapon, maybe I could shoot them down from here. Should I have taken a bow? As he was thinking that, Rachna spotted a rather big kobold riding a white wolf. He scowled and used appraisal right away. Name. None. Age. 9 level. 7 race. Kobold rider attributes. Strength. 3 endurance. 2 speed. 3 dexterity. 3 intelligence. 1.3 luck. 2 weapon. Crude long spear. Plus 20 attack armor. Alloy leather armor. Plus 15 defense statistics. Stamina. 13 MP 13/13 swiftness. 8.6 agility. 9 senses. 14.3 ATR cap 14.3 attack. 39, 19 plus 20, defense. 24, 9 plus 15, magic attack. 3.9 MP regen. 0.03 per minute proficiencies. Polearm mastery, LV.2, riding, LV.2, unique or racial traits. Dog nose. Plus 5 to senses. As expected, this guy is significantly stronger than the rest. But he's still marginally weaker than me. What worries me is, Ragnar focused on the wolf and activated appraisal again. Name. None age. 8 level. 7 race. Plain wolf attributes. Strength. 4 endurance. 4 speed. 6 dexterity. 1.1 intelligence. 0.8 luck. 2 armor. Leather armor. Plus 10 defense statistics. Stamina. 19.1 MP 8/8 swiftness. 13.6 agility. 8.2 senses. 21.9 ATR cap 17.9 attack. 15.1 defense. 26, 16 plus 10 magic attack. 2.4 MP regen. 0.02 per minute proficiencies. Bite, LV.5, unique or racial traits. Wolf nose. Plus 10 to senses. Yeah, this is dangerous, Ragnar commented inwardly. With my current stats, I could easily deal with normal kobolds. This wolf, on the other hand, is dangerous. As he was thinking that, the beast in question was looking around itself with a questioning stare. The wolf sniffed, then immediately turned toward the roof of the main building while growling. Ragnar's eyes widened as he watched the kobold rider notice him as well. He then barked orders very loudly, and almost every kobold suddenly started running inside the building he was on. How? Appraisal is a spell that can be sensed if the target has at least half of the caster's sense attribute. Ragnar's eyes twitched ever so slightly. Alexa, didn't you find that information important enough to tell me beforehand? From now on, be sure to add these kinds of particularities in the description of the skill. Acknowledged. Ragnar sighed and he suddenly shivered. His body reacted on its own as he tilted his head to the side and caught a projectile that was aimed at his head. He scrutinized the arrow in his hand before looking at the rough location he estimated it had been shot. He spotted exactly 6 kobolds holding bows and knocking arrows to shoot him. A quick check with appraisal revealed to him that they were level 5 and barely stronger than the level 3 he had encountered. However, they all possessed the archery skill. He jumped back to get out of their line of sight as another arrow flew by. He then started hearing the footsteps of the kobolds currently going up the stairs to reach him. A lot of them are coming up here, he muttered. Alexa, to check my stats or my current quests, how do I do it? Just will it, Ragnar. As you have naturally been doing with status windows. As told, he willed in his head to see the advancement of his quest and a prompt appeared. Initiation mission. Survive. Objective. Survive until the end of the day. Additional information. 40/50th enemies alive. 40 left, huh? I could try and make another trap or just face them head on. The stairs to the roof are somewhat easy to defend. Well, as for a trap, I have nothing to work with here, Ragnar mumbled and walked in circles with a relaxed demeanor as Pronos observed him curiously. When the noises of the kobolds were near, he stopped and made his decision. He used his cigarette case to flare the mechanism of his scarf and planted his guandao in the ground. He opened the door to the roof and looked at Pronos. Here's the plan, little guy. Go down there and hide. Wait for them to go up the stairs and assault this door before gradually poisoning them one by one. Got it. The little snake hissed and slithered with a clearly higher speed than before he attributed his points. He descended until he was in a corridor and activated one of his 2 active skills. His scales darkened and took on the color of the wall and the floor. He then closed his eyes and Ragnar closed the door as loudly as possible so that the kobolds would not doubt that he was on the roof. He put his back against the door and it took a full minute before he heard and felt something hitting the door. The rate at which it happened continued to increase until he was sure that at least 3 kobolds were hitting the door together along with many others behind them judging by the barks. He breathed in and grabbed his glaive right below the blade which he pointed at the door that he was forcing closed. He then pierced the door behind him and heard a loud whimper before a prompt notified him of the kill. LV.5 Elite Kobold killed. Level up. S plus rank. Plus 3 free points. Requirement for level up updated. Current progress. April 30th. Rachna dismissed it and quickly turned around and gripped the shaft of Sonata. He pushed the weapon further and it struck 2 other kobolds. He then opened the door and the Guandao moved in consequence and killed 2 more. Rachna swiftly pulled out Blood Fang as a kobold immediately pounced at him the moment the door was opened. He first grabbed the creature's head and plunged the blade of his dagger deep in its neck. The kobold fell at his feet lifeless and the remaining ones growled as they rushed toward the roof while stepping on their dead comrades. Meanwhile, none had noticed the ones falling behind because of a glowing poison in their veins. Rachna whirled Blood Fang and faced the first kobold coming up. He sidestepped the were-dog's spear and grabbed its wrist before literally crushing it. He cut the monster's throat in a quick swing before grabbing the crude spear it had dropped. He then grabbed the kobold's body and flung it behind him to clear his vision. He proceeded to thrust the spear through the hearts of 2 others who inevitably forced a lot of their brethren to trip and stagger. After that, Rachna didn't hesitate in the slightest as he ran down the stairs. His dagger flashed a few times and 3 more kobolds died. One even almost had its head chopped off. The corpses piled up and the rest of the kobolds were struggling to climb. Rachna glanced at his left where he could see the other part of this 1-meter wide staircase going down. He managed to spot at least 5 kobolds lying on the ground with pulsing blue veins. At the same time, he performed a quick count and believed there were roughly around 15 kobolds left in this relatively confined space. He huffed and kicked a kobold that had managed to get over the corpses. The were-dog's ribs made a cracking sound and he flew until the wall, hitting 2 of its comrades in the process. Rachna threw Blood Fang and his Swiss knife which both pierced the heads of those 2. He then crouched and picked up 2 spears. He vaulted over the corpses and slit the throat of 2 kobolds with the tip of the weapons. Afterward, he threw both of them. One pierced the necks of 2 targets while the other pierced the abdomen of another. At that point, the kobolds finally started panicking. Their numerical advantage was being utterly crushed. They were about to run away when they noticed that a lot of their comrades had also died in their rear lines. It was only then that they noticed the little snake who was currently biting the neck of an 8th victim. They froze in place and Rachna saw them inching backward as he approached them. He passed by the 2 kobolds he had killed by throwing his knives and retrieved them. He bent forward and balanced his weight around his waist. His body disappeared in the eyes of the kobolds and before they knew it, 4 of them had been eliminated. There was only one left. The creature was shivering and whimpering. On one side, a small but fast snake had poison dripping from its fangs and on the other, a blood-stained human held 2 knives with an impassive expression as he stood in the middle of a sea of corpses. The kobold blinked and the human disappeared. 2 hands then grabbed it from behind, one on the back of its head and the other firmly clutching its muzzle. Rachna twisted the were-dog's neck in a blurry motion and exhaled as the corpse fell on the ground and splashed the blood on it. He finally could look at the prompts given to him by the system. LV.5 Elite Kobold killed. LV.3 Elite Kobold killed. LV.3 Elite Kobold killed. LV.3 Elite Kobold killed. Level up. LV.3 Elite Kobold killed. LV.3 Elite Kobold killed. Level up. S plus rank. Plus 6 free points. Requirement for level up updated. Current progress. 8/50 You have reached level 5. Your potential value has reached its limit. The free points will increase by 1 each level from now on while every 5 will get you 2 points. The number of kobolds he had killed had allowed him to level up twice. He was now sitting at level 5 with 9 free attribute points. My potential value has achieved its limit. Is it thanks to that I was gaining 3 points each level until now? He muttered as he walked back to the roof to retrieve Sonata. He had left it stuck in the door because he couldn't have used it as he wanted in the staircase. Blood Fong was more than enough for the job considering how weak the kobolds were compared to him. Kronos caught up to him and climbed his shoulder. Rachna looked at him and checked his level. Name: Kronos Master. Rachna Ziora. Age: 3 level. 4, 2/40, race. Iron Snake. Title: Nil. Potential. S. Attributes: Strength 1, Endurance 6.5, Speed 4, Dexterity 1, Intelligence 3, Luck 3 available points 6. Level 4, and he has 6 points available. Alexa, how does this potential value work? Regarding the free points granted. Rachna scowled at her inquiry. It meant that this value had more significance than just the number of free points during the first level. Ups. Yes, he replied. For now, he had no reason to ask anything else and he couldn't be bothered to hear about something he'd most likely learn in the future. The potential of a host is measured from E to S+. To answer your question, every host receives a determined amount of bonus attribute points during the initial stage. The S-class gets 3 points until level 5 included, which amounts to 9 bonus points. For the A-class, it becomes 8 bonus points. For the B-class, it's 6. For the C-class, it's 4. The D-class only gets 2 and finally, the E-class gets none. This sounds quite predisposed, Rachna commented while pulling Sonata out. He shouldered it and offhandedly checked the number of enemies left, 8. How are these values decided? The potential value is calculated based on the host's natural abilities. Rachna, you were labeled S+ for your high-level skills and attributes as well as your unawakened Nirvana skill. Nirvana skill, huh? Rachna muttered while walking down the stairs with Kronos slithering around his neck. Well, putting that aside, for now, the fact that you are prioritizing certain people over others can mean a few things. Frankly speaking, all beings have potential. Making it easy for people who luckily had a resonant awakening of theirs is a bit unfair. But, all things considered, you could also say that people who haven't had their potential awakened might need to be roughed up a bit to change that very fact, he said with an awfully blank look as if it didn't surprise or trouble him at all. However, from another perspective, you can posit that these attribute points are resources provided by someone or something. In other words, it's plausible that they are limited and thus need to be carefully regulated. In that case, prioritizing the gifted ones is merely the logical course of action since wasting affluence on possibly useless people is what we call improvidence. To conclude, this isn't a game, this isn't a test, this isn't training, this isn't grooming. The only people who manage, govern, and distribute resources are entrepreneurs. This joke of a system is an industry I've been dragged into. Rachna's expression became even more vacant. And I don't like the fact that I've been hired against my will. Rachna, do I have the permission to offer my opinion? Alexa's voice suddenly sounded a lot more humane and serious and Rachna squinted as he picked up on it. What is it? Making of you a host might have been the system's miscalculation. Rachna stopped in front of the main entrance of the school. Behind the glass, he could see the kobold rider and his wolf glowering at him along with the row of kobold archers. You think? He replied with a snort and whirled Sonata. Well then, I can't let you down now, can I? He said and slashed the door apart. I have to earn my pay. Chapter 5. Encounter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The moment Rachna came out, a salve of arrows was shot his way. He immediately rolled away while intercepting a few of the projectiles with Sonata. His eyes calmly scanned the surroundings. The kobold rider was located a few tens of meters away from him with the archers in line behind him. The rider was barking orders like a maniac, probably telling his subordinates to shoot. From the creature's perspective, when Rachna came out covered in blood, it had been struck by a sudden feeling of doom, realizing all its troops had died. It was concretized when 2 of the archers were suddenly killed by throwing knives. LV.5 Archer Kobold killed. LV.5 Archer Kobold killed. Requirement for level up updated. Current progress. 18/50ths. Rachna dismissed the prompt and inhaled before kicking the ground. The 4 remaining archers shot their arrows at the same time. He deflected the first 2, dodged the third one, and literally caught the last one barehanded. Before the second salve could be shot, Rachna had entered the kobold rider's range. The first to attack was the wolf. The beast snarled and charged with an impressive speed. It reached with its opened maw and Rachna barely dodged it. At the same time, the kobold thrust its spear at him. 1 to STR, 2 to Dex, 2 to Speed, he ordered internally and felt the change happen instantly. His vision and mind became clearer. He easily saw the path of the spear and grabbed it. The kobold tried to pull it back, but it was firmly held in place. Rachna squinted and pulled it himself. The rider almost fell off, and that was an opening long enough for him to swing Sonata. The azure blade released heat and a cloud of smoke as it cut through the neck of the creature. Rachna then jumped back as a volley of arrows descended. The wolf looked at its master falling on the ground next to it and howled. It rushed toward the human in front of it with bloodshot eyes. The wolf leaped and swung its paw while falling down. Rachna followed it with his eyes and sidestepped to dodge it. The beast then opened its mouth to bite his neck. Rachna whirled Sonata before it could do that and struck the wolf's belly with the shaft's end. He then grabbed its throat and slammed the entire beast on the ground. The wolf whimpered, and before it could retaliate, a fuming azure blade had beheaded it. Rachna sighed and swung his spear to get rid of the blood before putting it back around his neck as a scarf. He turned toward where the remaining kobold archers were supposed to be to see them dead on the ground with Pronos standing triumphantly on top of one. Ding! Initiation mission completed. Assessment. No enemies were left alive. Host received no injury. Mission time. 19.26.30, host was the first of his group to finish. Rewards. 1,000 tallies, utility item select. Congratulations, Rachna. You earned the right to pick a utility item. Rachna hummed as he picked up Pronos and put him on his shoulder. The little snake promptly snuggled inside the scarf. Start by explaining what a utility item is. And what are tallies? Utility items are also referred to as providence items. They are usually meant to be used out of combat to help the hosts in their daily life. For instance, a water gourd that replenishes itself indefinitely is one example. The reward you have been granted by the system is to pick a utility item. You can choose anything. A drink that never ends, food that regenerates, effective but long application heals, and so on. As for the tallies, you can consider them as the system's currency. I see, Rachna mused. I assume there will be an occasion for me to spend these later. As for the utility item, he pulled out his cigarette case from his pocket. Can you scan this case and turn it into one? It is possible. The resulting item will be of a higher grade than if it was made out of nothing as well. Then do it. Acknowledged. Please give the item a name before the process. Obsidian smoke, he answered without hesitation. To the point, even Alexa was perplexed about the significance of this name. Right after, the case in Rachna's hands started glowing. After half a minute or so, the conversion was over. The silver had turned slightly more metallic looking and the item's name had been engraved on it. Rachna immediately looked at its properties. Designation. Utility item / cigarette case rarity. Blue name. Obsidian smoke capacity. 20/20ths, recharges once every 5 hours, description. A perfect combination of drugs and medicinal herbs. The formula for these cigarettes was made exclusively for Rachna Ziora. The case itself has an integrated lighter powered by iron stones. It is used as the Azure Sonata's trigger input. Effects. Heightened awareness. Increases senses and swiftness by 1%, lasts an hour, decelerated alertness. Numbs emotions and cancels mental debuffs. Not bad. I didn't expect it to have an effect like this, Rachna remarked. Utility items with a rarity above green are generally hard to find and have additional perks that can support a host during combat. You are lucky, Rachna. I see. Can you tell me more about the rarity? Items have 7 rarity classifications. Gray, green, blue, orange, purple, red, and gold. In terms that most modern humans can understand, each rarity can be described respectively by common, uncommon, rare, special, masterwork, epic, and legendary. That doesn't explain much in my opinion, but I guess I can more or less imagine how valuable each rarity is now, Rachna remarked and lit up a cigarette before putting the case back in his pocket. At the same time, he noticed something from the corner of his eyes. One of the bows on the ground, dropped by the kobolds, was glowing. He raised an eyebrow and approached it before grabbing it. He briefly went over the statistics. There was nothing special about it and the rarity was gray. But a certain system window appeared in front of him. Conditions have been met. Do you wish to upgrade Azure Sonata by using wooden bow as a material? Y/N. Rachna opened his eyes wide at the question. He only hesitated a few seconds before pressing yes. The bow in his hands then turned into particles of light that merged with his scarf. The process was fast and simple and the scarf itself had no obvious changes. But when he checked Sonata's attributes, Rachna was pleasantly surprised. Designation. Cloth/scarf, current, name. Azure Sonata rarity. Blue durability. 100/100 perks. Intertwined miniature ion systems. The item possesses memory of form and is able to switch from one form to another with an ion energy influx as the trigger. Currently available. Scarf, Guandao, Bao. Putting aside the fact that the attributes displayed changed according to the form it was in, there was something new. A third form had been added, Bao. Rachna pressed on the glowing word and it showed him the description of the Bao even without transforming his scarf. Designation. Range/Bao name. Azure Sonata rarity. Blue durability. 100/100 perks. Intertwined miniature ion systems. The weapon possesses memory of form and is able to switch from one form to another with an ion energy influx as the trigger. Currently available. Scarf, Guandao, Bao. Ion arrows. The weapon has the ability to generate arrows composed of raw ion energy on its own with a limited rate of 5 per minute. Current attack value of the arrows. 30 at the host's full strength. This could definitely be useful in the future. A ranged weapon is always welcome, Rachna muttered and another sound resounded in his head to notify a new prompt. There were now 3 system windows open in his vision. He frowned and looked at the one which had just popped up. You have finished the initiation. You will automatically be ejected in 5.48. 20. Do you wish to exit now? Y/N. Rachna stared at the choice given to him for a moment before ultimately pressing no. He closed the other virtual screens and turned toward the forest surrounding the school. If they give me a choice, there might be something worth searching for in this place, he said and looked at Pronos. What do you think, little guy? The little snake squinted as he observed the dense forest. He hissed softly and Rachna nodded as if he had understood him. Yeah, I know. I have this feeling too. It might be dangerous, he said but still walked toward the forest without any change in his expression. But no one can ever progress if they never try. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Before he knew it, Ragnar had been wandering in the forest for hours. There were still 2 hours left on the clock. The time he had spent until now was in the end not wasted. He crossed a dozen or so wild kobolds and Pronos had reached level 5. He himself was close to level 6 as well. During that time, Pronos had allocated most of his attribute points. He had concentrated on his speed and endurance, which meant that his defense had reached a whopping 38. As for Ragnar, he had 4 points left and he waited on them. He preferred keeping them so that he could use them in combat in a way that would suit the situation. Another thing he did was dissect a kobold. He wanted to verify a few things and the gore really didn't bother him in the slightest. In the end, he found nothing out of the ordinary. Their anatomy was just like a dog's. The only interesting point was that their legs had developed to be able to let them stand, although it was an incomplete evolution and they were easy to disable. Then, after the dissection, the system delivered a prompt that pleased Ragnar. Congratulations! Through meeting the specified conditions, appraisal's level has increased. It can now show a relative amount of information surpassing the user's wisdom. From that, he came to the conclusion that appraisal was an ability that would advance based on his own actions. When he got the skill, it was after analyzing the kobolds from appearance, and when he decided to take a look at their anatomy, it leveled up. This meant that skills could probably be created if given the right conditions, and it would also mean that certain skills couldn't be leveled up by just using them. As he was thinking that, Ragnar suddenly stopped moving. He had suddenly picked up a presence nearby. Though, it would be more accurate to say something was warning him. Ragnar's senses had been quantified as 40, and although he might not know it himself, it was a very high number for someone of his level. The sense stat didn't only stand for hearing, smell, touch, taste, or sight. To be exact, each of these is actually a part of something else, instinct or, in other words, the thing that people call the sixth sense. On top of that, his eye of the mind gave him an unnatural sense for danger. Currently, Ragnar was rooted on the ground because of that very reason. Something was preying on him and he was very aware of it. Pronos didn't seem to notice until his contractor triggered Sonata to transform. The little snake abruptly felt the unknown presence because its hostility had probably jumped at the sight of a weapon. Ragnar looked around him warily. The silence was weighing on his mind, and despite his mental fortitude, his body was tense. The situation didn't change for a few minutes, and it was broken by a shadow that leaped from the tree's shadows. Ragnar reacted as fast as he possibly could, but he only managed to tilt his body to the side while trying to jump away. When he realized that the silhouette was too close for him to dodge, he raised his left arm to shield himself. In the next instant, he heard a very disturbing crunching sound and a terrible pain hit him. Then, something struck his abdomen and sent him flying. The momentum was such that he broke a tree before touching the ground. He coughed blood and staggered as he tried to stand while using Sonata as support. He looked up to see what had attacked him and his eyes widened in shock. It was a wolf. A very large wolf with dark blue fur and silver eyes. The beast was taller than any human and wider than any bear. But what truly stunned Ragnar was the wagging tails behind the creature, 9 of them to exact. Then, his eyes were attracted to the wolf's mouth, which held something he hoped he hadn't seen. Ragnar slowly looked at his left shoulder and winced. Half of his arm had been ripped off and he could even see his humerus sticking out. The bleeding was serious, and if he didn't take care of it quick, he would probably die. His mind was jolted when he heard a cracking sound. He refocused on the wolf and saw it munch on the arm. He watched grimly as his arm disappeared in the beast's stomach. All right, Ragnar stood up and sneakily glanced at Pronos, who had taken the chance to hide in the bushes earlier. The wolf appeared to be unmoving for now. The only thing he was doing was staring. Ragnar slowly grabbed and tore the blue ribbon wrapped around his weapon. He quickly put it around his left arm and tied it tightly by pulling it with his teeth to stop the bleeding. Sonata's ribbon had already started being reconstructed when he finished. Ragnar then silently cast appraisal on the wolf and his confidence wavered for the first time. Shit. Chapter 6. First Harvest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Name. None. Age. 2 level. 10 race. 9-tailed wolf, cub. Attributes. Strength. 10 endurance. 7 speed. 8 dexterity. 4 intelligence. 9 luck. 4 statistics. Stamina. 36 MP 90 swiftness. 34 agility. 16 senses. 42 ATR cap 42 attack. 55.5 defense. 31 magic attack. 27 MP regen. 0.54 per minute proficiencies. Bite, LV 8. Plus 80% attack when biting. Tracking, LV 0.4. Plus 20% senses while tracking. Magic skills. Fire, LV 0.3. Plus 30% magic attack, mystic fire, LV 0.1. Appraisal level insufficient. Cognitive skills, passive. Smell of the wolf god, LV, spontaneous skills, active. Shadow step, LV 0.3. Cooldown, 80s nirvana skills. Tailed pearl. Cooldown, 48H unique or racial traits. Sharp fangs. Plus 100% attack when using fangs, 9. Tailed wolf's nose. Plus 50% to senses, 9. Tailed clan's blessing. Ragnar analyzed every single detail of the status in front of him while keeping eye contact with the wolf as they circled around each other. The wolf was awfully silent and Ragnar believed that it was planning to attack as soon as its skill, Shadow Step, was available again. That was probably the ability that had cost him his arm earlier. It also means that the more I wait, the more chances it has to kill me, Ragnar thought. I can sense Prono's intention to sneak attack. It might work. This beast has a significant sense value, so I can only trust Pronos to be able to stay undetected. As he was thinking that, Ragnar's vision blurred for a second. His injury was getting the best of him in the end. It wasn't only his arm that had been affected, he had been hit in the ribs and he could only hope that he didn't have internal bleeding. The wolf wasn't stupid and instantly noticed its opponent's fragile stance. It leaped toward Ragnar at a speed drastically lower than earlier without Shadow Step. Ragnar shook his head and tightly gripped his spear before deflecting the wolf's claws before avoiding the bite that followed. The creature landed behind its prey and waved its 9 tails. Then, the same number of crimson flames appeared in the air. Ragnar's eyes narrowed as he jumped away. He swung Sonata once and cut through 3 of the flames before they exploded. A cloud of smoke shrouded the wolf, but it apparently did nothing to it as the 6 remaining flames emerged from the smoke like missiles and flew toward Ragnar as if they were guided. He clicked his tongue and ran toward a tree before slashing at its trunk. The tree easily fell under the blade and collided with the missile-like flames. An explosion occurred and although it was small, the tree was turned into ashes very quickly. Ragnar gazed at the wolf through the fire that was separating them. The gap in firepower is evident, but Sonata is more than enough for me to kill it as long as I land a good hit. Without my arm, I can't use the bow form, though it wouldn't do enough damage anyway. I can only wait for Pronos and hope that this wolf doesn't use its Nirvana skill. My appraisal couldn't show what it was, but if the cooldown is anything to go by, I don't want to bet. For that, I need it to feel unthreatened, but I also need to survive. No choice, 4 points to speed. He instructed inwardly and he felt his mind getting clearer and his body getting lighter. Speed and dexterity came in a shared bundle. The latter increased agility drastically, in other words, body control. But the former was raw velocity and the mental ability to cope with fast movements. Considering he needed to survive, it was the most rational choice for Ragnar. And it was confirmed when he barely dodged the wolf's swipe after it had been shrouded in shadows. Shadow Step, probably a speed burst kind of skill, Ragnar commented inwardly as he moved out of the way. At the same time, he heard the notification of appraisal leveling up. If it wasn't for the situation, he would have come to the conclusion that this level up was due to him analyzing the properties of a skill. He then whirled Sonata and left a deep gash on the wolf's back. Although he had only one arm left, his mastery of the spear hadn't been set at level 8 for nothing. The nine-tailed beast roared in pain and used its rear legs to hit Ragnar, who merely used his weapon to shield himself and retreat with the knockback. When he landed, he looked up to see the wolf's open mouth blazing and seemingly charging something. Ragnar furrowed his eyebrows with a taciturn look. This seems stronger than the previous ones. I might not be able to stop it with just a few trees, he thought, then felt something nudging his mind. It was as if someone or something was talking to him. Pronos, he wants me to stop its movements. Ragnar instantly made his decision. He anchored his legs and hoisted Sonata above his shoulder before throwing it with all of his strength. The azure spear made its way through the air at an impressive speed, but the wolf easily avoided it, although it had been forced to stop the casting of its fire magic. The creature glanced at the spear which had just pierced the ground next to it before looking back at its opponent. Then, it heard the sound of the wind and immediately jerked back in fright when it saw the human barely a meter away. Ragnar was unbelievably focused as he rushed toward the wolf. As planned, it hadn't expected him to charge so recklessly, and the only counter it gave was a sweep of its claws. Ragnar ducked under it and grabbed Sonata again. He pulled it out of the ground and used his hand and his foot to twist it and revert it to its scarf form. With the scarf in his hand, Ragnar continued on his momentum and positioned himself behind the wolf. He grabbed both ends of the scarf and put it around the beast's neck before pulling with everything he had. Pronos. When he shouted, the little snake swiftly slithered out of the bushes. He also had put the rest of his points into speed for this. The moment Pronos made himself known, the wolf noticed him right away, but it couldn't do anything as the snake bit its leg, releasing a glowing poison in its veins. When the beast realized what was going on, it released a noise that sounded like the mix of a howl and a rage-induced roar. Immediately after, its entire body was immolated in blue fire. Ragnar and Pronos couldn't get away in time before the fire shined and produced a massive shockwave. The trees around them were deracinated before burning in midair. Pronos had high defense, so the blow hadn't done much damage to him, but the blunt force had almost incapacitated him. On the other hand, Ragnar crashed on the ground after being flung like a ragdoll. Every part of his body was hurt in some way, and a random branch had managed to puncture his stomach. Ragnar couldn't move at all, and his consciousness was slowly fading away as he heard Pronos make sounds of anguish as he nudged him. He gritted his teeth and his nails scraped the soil until it bled. One of his eyes started turning bloodshot, and a prompt from the system flickered into existence along with an emotionless voice that wasn't Alexa's. Anomaly detected. Analysis of host's mental state in progress. Lapsed. Detection of unknown unique trait. Adaptation of host's attributes. Lapsed. These words were echoing in Ragna's head as Pronos hissed in the direction of the wolf, which was walking toward them with blue flame surrounding it. Then, Ragnar suddenly started laughing. It was loud and eerie. The nine-tailed beast abruptly froze in place and almost took a step backward. In its perspective, the human who had not shown any bloodlust whatsoever until now had suddenly released one even higher than its own. Pronos was also scared. His connection to his owner allowed him to know of his state at any moment and also to feel his presence, and that presence had suddenly been warped. The two creatures gazed at Ragnar, who was now getting up. His bleeding had stopped and he was already holding Sonata in its Guandao form. His expression was shadowed until he finally was standing straight. Pronos cowered slightly and the wolf growled, instinctively trying to intimidate an opponent that it felt it couldn't defeat. Ragnar's expression was the very description of insanity and joyfulness put together. He sported a wide grin and his bloodshot eyes perfectly matched its intensity. His chuckle resounded and the wolf acted out of pure urgency. Its 9 tails wagged and conjured a large blue fireball. The magic projectile was shot at its target and Rachna's eyes flashed as he thrust Sonata at the fireball before it exploded. The wolf watched the flames spread with heightened alertness. The bloodlust hadn't disappeared in the slightest. The blue light was reflected by its eyes which widened in shock when a silhouette emerged. Rachna ran toward the wolf with an unbreakable smirk. When he was close enough, he swung Sonata vertically. The beast noted that its opponent was considerably slower than before. It easily sidestepped the spear strike, but when the azure blade hit the ground, the earth literally cracked open. A wave of dread immediately invaded the Lupin's mind. It was about to use Shadow Step to flee when Rachna let go of Sonata and directly grabbed it behind its neck. The beast was shockingly overpowered for a brief moment and Rachna ruthlessly kneed its muzzle. After that, he punched its throat and kicked one of its legs. The wolf had been put into a daze by the first strike and its leg breaking was the thing that pulled him out of it. It snarled and instead of using Shadow Step to get away used it to bite into Rachna's shoulder at an incredible speed. The wolf expected him to let go but instead, Rachna laughed again and followed by hitting it with his knee a second time. The one who was forced to let go was the beast. It was slowly going crazy because of the pain and the fact that it didn't understand how its opponent had gotten so much stronger physically wasn't helping. In the end, the 9-tailed being decided to throw the remainder of its mana into its strongest skill. A wave of power shoved Rachna away and a sphere of blue and black energy appeared above the wolf. So, that's the might of a Nirvana skill, huh? Rachna's voice sounded amused. Looks like you're using a lot of mana, he grinned. Are you sure that it's a good idea, Mutt? He cackled darkly and the wolf was confused at first before it suddenly felt its strength wear out. The tailed pearl was forcefully dispelled and it staggered on its feet. The beast desperately tried to muster its magic or even to just move, but it was to no avail. It was then that it finally noticed that the left half of its body had blue glowing lines all over it. Looks like I was right, the human uttered. Iron poison isn't your regular type of toxin. It's an energy-based venom. When it is injected inside the body, it will spread through the blood vessels and burn through them to carbonize the nerves and muscle tissues. As far as I know, the only way to stop it is to use another source of energy to counter it. Magnetic fields can do the trick usually. As Rachna continued to talk, the wolf was losing more and more strength and awareness. It barely could listen to what was being said, much less understand it. But, evidently, there was something that was protecting you from it, Rachna squinted. That thing was probably your magic power, your mana. But you went ahead and expended all of it. He sneered and approached the immobile wolf with Sonata in hand. No matter how much it struggled, its body wasn't responding in the slightest. Rachna stopped in front of it and lifted Sonata. You were fucking annoying. I'll give you that. The azure blade of Sonata pierced the head of the wolf and that was it. LV.109. Tailed wolf killed. Congratulations. You killed a creature 2 times your level. The experience has been doubled. Congratulations. You killed a legendary rank creature. The experience has been tripled. Congratulations. You killed a legendary rank creature. You acquired a new title. Congratulations. Your reward for the initiation was increased by 900 talis. Level up. +1 free point. Current progress. 57 of 60. Rachna looked at the notification before collapsing on the ground without warning. His eyes and expression returned to normal. He started panting heavily and Pronos slithered toward him. He glanced at him and before he could say anything, his injuries toll finally overwhelmed him. The last thing he heard before fainting was Alexa trying to say something to him. Rachna's consciousness was waning. He wasn't sure of what was happening to him but after he killed the 9-tailed wolf and fainted, he would suddenly wake up every few minutes or so. But he could never open his eyes or even hear anything other than the mechanical voice of the system telling him the time remaining before the initiation was over and if he wanted to leave or not. His mind had been drowned and pulled back more than a dozen times already, and the more the countdown continued, the more he was sure that the system was non-stop asking him if he wanted to leave because he would probably die before the timer reached 0. He wanted to answer but he couldn't do anything. He couldn't speak nor could he even think clearly. It was then that he felt something reacting deep inside him. His heart began to beat faster and louder and for the first time, the system said something else other than the time left. Anomaly detected. Another one. This time, even Rachna himself knew it wasn't referring to what happened against the wolf. The host's critical state has triggered a change. Congratulations, Rachna Ziora, your innate nirvana skill, the harvester, has been awakened. Pronos was continuously attempting to wake his owner up since he had fainted. Alexa, which he shared with Rachna as their personal AI, had told him what would happen if he couldn't wake up. There was an hour left on the clock when Pronos finally saw movement from Rachna. He was happy and relieved. Rachna slowly stood up but strangely, his eyes were still closed and there was no indication that he was aware of his surroundings. Pronos hissed softly in worry and watched perplexed as his human owner walked to the corpse of the wolf. The little snake was dumbfounded when Rachna handed the beast's carcass and took out a very gory heart along with a few pieces of organs. He was even more lost and shocked when Rachna started eating it. The harvester has been activated. The heart has been assimilated. Core gene established, 9-tailed werewolf. These words resounded in Rachna's head but he couldn't hear them because what was moving his body was nothing more than instinct. Pronos watched stunned as his owner yelled like a genuine beast after eating the heart before falling on the ground again. Then, something even more shocking befell Rachna's body and the little snake was now questioning his own sanity. An hour later, a global message from the system was communicated to every host currently going through the initiation. Pay attention. This is a global missive. We repeat. This is a global missive. The initiation period is officially over. The number of survivors from the original 29,864 of this batch is 15,298. Congratulations to all of you. Within 40.8 hours, the system will give out the tutorial mission. Survive well, hosts. Chapter 7. Wolfie, you are listening at novelfull.audio. When Rachna woke up, the first thing he saw was a spinning fan hanging from a white ceiling. He blinked several times until he suddenly felt something hitting his face. He grunted and picked up whatever was obstructing his view. He was met with the bright blue eyes of Pronos who was staring at him in what seemed to be glee and relief. Rachna scowled. He was actually quite confused. He sat up and looked around before expressing his insightful reaction. What, for the lack of a better description, he was sitting in the middle of a convenience store. He was currently in an aisle filled with nothing but blankets. Who the hell has an aisle dedicated to blankets? Is that really your first question? An unfamiliar voice then sounded from behind and a smell of lilac and sulfur invaded his nose. Rachna's eyes narrowed and he quickly stood up to face whoever it was. He noticed at the same time that his left arm had somehow been regenerated but he ignored it for now. He grabbed his scarf which was lying on the ground next to him and squinted. When he took a look at what was behind him, his scowl got even deeper. In front of him stood a woman as tall as he was. His eyes scanned her from the bottom to the top. She wore a one-piece vermilion dress and as his sight drifted upward, the more rapt he became. Her figure was undoubtedly one of the best he had ever seen and he was forced to admit that her cup size was almost as impressive as Flavia's. When he reached her face, he recognized a sense of both exasperation and curiosity in her expression. She had long red hair with a shade so vibrant that he thought he was looking at unmoving fire. Golden, sharp eyes with a bright yellow tint around the pupils. She also had fair smooth skin and glossy lips. If this was all of it, Rachna would have concluded his observation with just her being beautiful. But what his eyes caught afterward stunned him. On her cheeks, there were some very faint but noticeable whiskers. On top of her head, there was a pair of vulpine ears, and freely moving behind her were 9 fox tails. His expression was as cold as always, but the corner of his lips was twitching as he took in her features. He had just dealt with a 9-tailed wolf, and now he was confronted with this. "What's wrong, puppy? The view is too much for you." She grinned at him and spoke with a voice promising endless teasing. Rachna breathed in and relaxed. "All right. I have a few questions." "Well, shoot. I'm here for that anyway. Why is this aisle dedicated to blankets? Are we really doing this?" "Yes. This place is big," the fox woman deadpanned. "Way bigger than you can see. Consequently, the variety of items is very large as well, same for their quantity. Which results in this kind of situation, where a certain product simply can't be in only a single shelf but at least an entire aisle." Makes more sense than I expected," Rachna commented, and Pronos climbed his shoulder. The woman glanced at the little snake for a second before focusing on Rachna again. "So, what are the other questions? If I stay in the logic of a game, this should be a shop where we can use that currency the system gave me. A safe zone at that. You're probably the caretaker or something similar." The fox woman's eye twitched once. "Yes, smart kid. You could just ask me though. Also, from what I've gathered, you're supposedly here to assist me in understanding the situation. You said, I'm here for that earlier. The question would be whether you're an actual being made by the system solely for this shop, or if you're a host yourself, commanded to do this." Her smile became crooked as he continued. "You're probably the latter, considering the fact that it would be weird to make something as fancy as a 9-tailed fox to manage this place. So, my question is, what's your name, I guess?" She stared at him with a blank look. "Are you always like this?" "Like what?" "Insufferably analytical." "Maybe." The fox woman face palmed and sighed. "I feel bad for your AI. And you could at least say thank you. I'm the one who healed you when you came in here, and I'm working overtime because of that too. What did you do to lose a damn arm? Did the Kobold Rider's mount get you? HM. Does that mean that every host has the same enemies during the initiation?" She groaned in response. "Yes, smartass, at least for your batch. Did someone ever tell you that you're a rude kid, puppy? Where did all those cute boys who stutter when they see me go?" "What? You're into kids?" Rachna quipped with his usual tone and pulled out a cigarette. "I'm not, and no smoking here," she uttered, and it disappeared while it still was in his hand. Rachna frowned as he looked at his empty hand and had to push down the urge to use appraisal on that woman. He knew it would be a bad idea. He sighed and put Sonata around his neck. "Fine. Let's stop clowning. I'm Rachna Ziora. The little guy on my shoulder is Pronos. What about you?" The vixen snorted. "Finally. I still haven't heard my thanks, but I guess it'll do. The name's Kalith Yakshasa. Be sure to remember it. Yakshasa. You have something to do with Yakshas. Looks like you're uselessly knowledgeable too, huh?" She raised an eyebrow. "To answer your question, it's no. Yakshasa is the family name of the fox branch of the 9-tailed clan. It just sounds the same, but we have nothing to do with those holier than thou spirits. The 9-tailed clan." Rachna muttered as he remembered what he had seen on the status of the wolf he killed. "Yeah, you should know about it, right, puppy? Will you stop calling me puppy?" He retorted. "Why are you calling me that anyway? Why, you say? Haven't you taken a look at yourself? What do you?" He was interrupted by Pronos hissing in his ear. The little snake had a weird look on his face as he pointed somewhere with his tail. Ragnar followed it and froze when his eyes fell on something that was located around his lower back. He stayed stunned for quite a while until it finally registered in his brain what he was looking at. Now that he focused on it, he could also feel it like any other limb, and when he tried to control it, it abruptly started shaking. He slowly grabbed it and gawked at the dark blue and very fluffy tail. A wolf tail to be exact, in all its splendor, directly coming from the spot above his tailbone. It had even pierced through his clothes to grow. Ragnar then came to a realization and hesitatingly put his hand on his head just to feel two very unfamiliar additions that tickled every time he touched them. Wah, how? His mind was in turmoil. You're okay. You look as if it's the first time you've ever seen your own tail. Kalith tilted her head in pure confusion. It looked like she didn't even humor the possibility of him being human originally. I'm not okay. There are too many things wrong right now for me to be okay, he said impassively, and she was even more perplexed. And wait, that still doesn't explain why you call me puppy. At least, use Wolfie. Has someone ever told that you have a weird sense of priorities? Yes. What a weird brat I've been assigned to. She shook her head and turned around. We've been getting sidetracked for too long already. Follow me. It's unpleasant to keep standing, no. Ragnar squinted his purple eyes which, unknown to him, had gained a more bestial look. He started following her while silently ordering his status to appear. Host. Ragnar Ziora age. 17 level. 6, 57 to 60, race. 9. Tailed werewolf title. Legendary Slayer potential. S+ attributes. Strength. 1.9. 4 endurance. 2.5. 3 speed. 2. 9 dexterity. 4. 8 intelligence. 3.6. 4 luck. 9 available points. 1 statistics. Stamina. 27 MP 40 40th swiftness. 26 agility. 25 senses. 72 ATR cap 37 attack. 34.5 defense. 13 magic attack. 12 MP regen. 0.28 per minute proficiencies. Polearm mastery, LV.8. Plus 16% attack when wielding polearms. Taekwondo, LV.7. Plus 14%, dagger mastery, LV.7. Plus 14%, cooking, LV.6. Plus 60%. Magic skills. Unawakened. Cognitive skills, passive. Pain, resistance, LV max, fear, resistance, LV max, eye of the mind, LV max, fatigue resistance, LV 7, spontaneous skills, active. Appraisal, LV.3, claws, LV.1. Extend and retract claws at will. Plus 10% attack. Nirvana skills. The Harvester. An exceptionally rare type of skill, assimilation. The host has the ability to acquire a being's trait by devouring their heart. The first heart consumed by the host will determine the core genome and alter the host's race. Current number of traits assimilated. 1/4 first trait, core genome. 9. Tailed wolf. 1 tail unlocked. Next tail. LV.6/LV.10. Currently attuned abilities. Smell of the wolf god, claws, shape shift. Unique or racial traits. Ion Auto, sustainable nanomachines. Automatically kills foreign organisms and allows rapid improvement in body strength as well as the use of more muscle cells. An alternative mind that changes the host's behavior. The change is so drastic that the body itself has to follow. When this trait is activated, strength and endurance are swapped with speed and dexterity, and for a minute, the metabolism stops bleeding and accelerates healing. Shape shift. A skill exclusive to the nine-tailed werewolf. Grants the ability to shift between three forms: wolf, plus 70% speed, werewolf, all attributes plus 50%, Thurian. Smell of the wolf god, incomplete. Plus 100% to senses, and the host gains the ability to recognize auras through smell. It was a lot to take in. Even for Rachna. First of all, he wasn't human anymore. It's not like he was the kind of person to become depressed because he couldn't be called as such anymore, but the suddenness of it was unsettling. He then quickly went through the new skills he had gotten, purposefully skipping the Nirvana skill to come back to it later. To start off, the ability to smell auras was probably the reason why Kaleth smelled like lilac and sulfur to him. He also discreetly tried the claws skill, and his nails sharpened and grew in length before returning to normal at his command. He thought it was pretty handy, but what caught his attention the most before that were the other two new unique traits. For the unnamed one, he knew where it came from, but its effect gave him a big surprise. That explained how he had suddenly been able to nearly overpower the wolf and survive the magic it launched head-on. The second one, shape shift, was very interesting. From his understanding, the Thurian form was his current one, the default one in other words. The wolf form was probably just a regular quadrupedal one. As for the werewolf one, it was self-explanatory. After going over that, Rachna now fully focused on his Nirvana skill, the Harvester. It was an ability that allowed him to scavenge the hearts of creatures and appropriate their traits for himself. The fact that he outright became a werewolf was most likely due to the core genome. By taking in the heart of a wolf, he went from human to werewolf, a mix of the two. It seemed that he also had to unlock the 9 tails by leveling up. And finally, there was the 1 out of 4 traits assimilated note. Since the first was the 9-tailed wolf, it meant that he could absorb the traits of 3 other beings. He had no idea if that number would increase in the future or not though. As Rachna was thinking that, Kaleth had arrived at her destination. It was an open area in the middle of numerous aisles of different nature. There was a sort of desk in the center and 2 couches placed opposite of each other next to it. Kaleth sat on one of them and motioned Rachna to sit on the other. He complied silently while closing the system window. He still wanted to check the title he had gotten, but it would have to wait for now. Well then, Wolfie, get comfortable. I'm going to tell you what you need to know for now. Chapter 8. Learning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Firstly, I need to explain what this place is, Kaleth began while spreading her arms open, waving at the many aisles around them. This, as you've already guessed, is a shop. You can pretty much buy anything here as long as you have enough tallies. Though, of course, high-end and one-off items are a lot rarer. They usually aren't sold by the shop itself but by other hosts. Like an auction? Rachna inquired, and she nodded. Yes, that's accurate. In any case, if you want to buy something, you can look through the catalog from the system. If you want something really specific and you can't find it, ask your AI for help. Got it. Next, it concerns your little friend right there, Kaleth pointed at Pronos, who was relaxing in Rachna's scarf. What you have to know is that contracted pets are mostly graded and managed by the system just like any regular host, but they have a very special privilege, which is evolution. Evolution. Rachna glanced at his small companion. So, you're saying he could evolve to become stronger? Become bigger, or a different type of snake altogether? Pretty much. When a contracted pet reaches level 100, they will be prompted to choose a path of evolution that tallies their status. After that, most pets don't get to evolve again unless they have potential higher than B, Kaleth explained and took a sip of tea from a cup as if it had always been in her hand. Rachna scowled at it since he hadn't seen her pick it up at all. In fact, this isn't something I tell everyone who is assigned to me, she continued. The reason for that is simply that it's the first time I've seen a brand new host finish the initiation with a pet tagging along. And from what I can see, that little one isn't some mundane creature, she leveled a probing stare at Pronos, who hid his head inside the scarf in response. Rachna hummed and leaned against the couch. "Let me smoke and I'll tell you." The vixen raised an eyebrow and waved her hand dismissively with a sigh. Rachna took that as permission and lit up a cigarette with obsidian smoke. "That's a utility item," she remarked, and if she was surprised, she didn't show it. "That can only mean one thing: you're the one who finished the mission first." "Is that why you lost your arm? Did you rush it?" Rachna inhaled and huffed a cloud of smoke. He didn't refute her conjecture, since self-delusion was always the best way to hide something from others. He didn't know this woman, and although his situation was a completely new experience to him, he preferred keeping his secrets. "To answer your previous question, Pronos is an experimental subject from my planet. He escaped the lab and got dragged by the system at the same time as me." Kalith nodded at his words, thinking that it made sense, then her nose twitched when the smoke got close to her and her eyes became calculative. "This isn't nicotine. This feels like medicine. What are you using that for?" "It's just for a little problem of mine," Rachna shrugged. Kalith squinted. She was frankly mystified by the boy in front of her. "What are you, Wolfie? You're quite abnormal, to say the least. Especially your eyes. They're not what I would typically see on a kid being kidnapped by a game-like entity. Those. I've seen them before on the faces of broken men." Rachna didn't say anything, and a weighty atmosphere settled between them. It took a few minutes for Kalith to relent and shake her head. But as she was about to move on, Rachna whispered one word: inaccurate. Her eyes widened. "Sorry. Inaccurate. I didn't break, Foxy. I shattered into pieces. Unfortunately, when I glued them back, they couldn't work together anymore." Kalith was too confused to even say anything about the way he had called her. "Let's get this over with already," he uttered indifferently, jolting her out of her thoughts. "Tell me the rest of what I need to know. There are people I'm worried about out there." Her expression twitched. "Then at least act like you do," she retorted internally. "Fine. The last thing I want to inform you of is where you are currently." "Where, huh? I guess you don't specifically mean this shop this time. What, is this another world or something?" "Yes and no. This is within the system, no more, no less." Rachna frowned. "I'm not sure I follow." "Of course, what you'll see out there will probably make you think as if you were in another world, but there's a very important nuance. The trials you'll be going through in the future, the places you will be going to, the people you'll meet other than the hosts, keep in mind that all of them are from the system or are the system itself. Take your initiation for example. Thousands and thousands of different hosts went through it at the same time. Every single one of them was scattered across the same number of artificial dimensions made by the system itself." Rachna's pupils dilated ever so slightly at this. "As you've realized, it's a feat worthy of the mightiest beings, and the energy required to do something of the sort is monstrous. No one knows what the system is, much less the one who made it, if there is such being. Us, hosts, were thrown into this realm out of nowhere and were forced to go through all kinds of hardships. This system is old, you know. After thousands of years, hosts have made civilizations after being robbed of their original home. Some even decided to live a normal life in the system, but none of them truly feel free, as if they were in a prison." Rachna was grimly listening, and Pronos was very attentive as well. To say that they grasped the entirety of what she said would be a lie. But they knew they were about to be thrown into a very chaotic life. "I'm sure you can't fully understand what I mean without experiencing it yourself. You will learn in time, trust me. Considering how smart you appear, I believe you can deduce what I'm coming to. Once you leave this shop, you will enter what we call Plateau Zero, the tutorial. After that, you'll be allowed into the first plateau, also called the seedling ground. Are you insinuating that this system has a tower dynamic going on? The more we go up, the closer we get to whatever goal it might have presented us. Caliph chuckled. You can see it like that. But, honestly, no one calls this a tower. We have never gone up per se. Although the official designation is plateau, people call them in different ways: floors, stratos, levels, grounds. When a host is ready to go to a new one, they are given the choice to continue or remain living in the plateau they're in for the rest of their life. Ragnar rubbed his eyes, trying to calmly sort the intake of information that was slowly giving him a headache. How many plateaus? And if you're given a choice, what's the point? Is there an ultimate floor with a reward? Beats me, Caliph replied humorously and laughed when she saw Ragnar's expression become even more blank. I'm not lying. We don't know how many plateaus there are. We also have no idea of what lies at the end of the road or if there even is one. What's the point then? Without a goal, why does this system exist? Why would people even try to conquer it? Caliph closed her eyes. I told you that we could choose. Yes, and did you think that there wasn't a price to that choice? The corner of his eyes twitched as he discerned the implications of that. What kind of punishment do you get? Caliph smirked. I'll admit that you have an uncanny ability to perceive the truth, Wolfie, she said, and he grunted, which only made her smile wider. You're right, there are consequences. If you decide to stay on a plateau, the system abandons you and takes away your strength and privileges. People will mistreat you, even abuse you if they want. Within the system, weakness is the worst sin. Ragnar scoffed. If weakness is a sin, what the hell do they take strength for? Caliph let out a chuckle filled with bitterness. Indeed. Weakness stems from strength, and the strong trample the weak because of their very own feebleness. What a messed up world we live in, Wolfie. What about the opposite? Ragnar changed the subject. You said that the system tells the host when they're ready to go to the next plateau. If that is true, then someone could just enter a floor, do nothing, and the system would never call them out. From what I've seen and just heard, this system seems pretty sadistic, and there's no way that it doesn't have a measure against indolent people. Once again, you're spot on. When a host accepts the system's prompt to enter the next level, they have the right to come back to any plateau they've been to before, and they are free to do whatever they want. But they also have 3 years to achieve the necessary conditions, which are provided, mind you, to go to the next stage, or they will be stripped of their strength. It isn't as radical though. They won't lose their system, they will just go back to level 1 and most of their abilities will be sealed, which is still a death sentence in itself, but not without a chance of recovery. 3 years. That sounds like plenty of time to me. Caliph grinned. That's the thing. Sometimes, getting to the next plateau is hard. And when you're not competent enough, 3 years is far from enough. And when hosts get desperate, they tend to gamble their life. That's why most hosts never graduate until the very last second of their 3-year period, so they can train and prepare themselves as much as they can for the following 3 years. And this repeats itself over and over again. It has been exactly 3,462 years since it started. The oldest and strongest hosts are close to reaching the 1,000th floor last I heard. Ragnar took in her words very silently. He rested his elbows on his knees and joined his hands together. Caliph watched him with hints of amusement and bemusement at his contemplative posture. Bullshit, was what he said after minutes of silence. Caliph almost choked on her tea. That's what you conclude this conversation with. She had expected something more, eloquent after all that musing. Yeah, Ragnar replied uncaringly. I don't have the patience to climb 1,000 floors under the constant pressure that I'm being forced to do so. Caliph tilted her head and one of her fox ears stood straight while the other folded. Would you have preferred to stay on your home planet, living a dreary life? Ragnar shrugged. I don't care that much either way. But, since I'm here, I swear I'm gonna give a piece of mine to the one at the origin of this system. So, you're one of those, huh? You seek retribution against whoever took you away. There are many like you. Most died or lost their powers already. You're saying that as if I gave a damn about the people before me, Foxy. Her eyebrow shot up. Those that walked before me are nothing but corpses that I have to walk over, he uttered in a detached tone. This is what my uncle taught me long ago. You never follow examples, you make your own. I see. You have an interesting uncle. You have no idea. Rachna's eyes flashed with an unusual light and Caliph was a bit surprised. She recognized respect in his look as well as unbreakable trust. A definite contrast to his countenance. If he were the one in my place right now, this system's end would have been a matter of time. A very short time on top of that. I'm sure of it. The initiation. He would have completed that in less than 3 minutes, barehanded and unscathed. Well, if your uncle is a fully grown Therian, it's human, Rachna interrupted. What? My uncle is human. He was an old man over 100 years old capable of lifting tons and versed in the art of war unlike any other. I still remember to this day how he would train me with the spear by making me attack him until he would either take a step back or stop catching the blade with his fingers. At that point, if Caliph wasn't impressed, it would be a lie. She knew that the world the wolfie in front of her came from had no magic. From his description, that human was ungodly strong. As she thought that, she finally noticed the elephant in the room. Wait, how are you a Therian? Your world shouldn't have any. Rachna stiffened. Let's just say that. I'm a very special case. Caliph stared at him as if she was trying to tear a hole in his person. That aside, why don't you recommend me something to buy? You're the shopkeeper here and I don't want to go through an entire catalog to try and find something that catches my eye. The vixen looked at him suspiciously and slowly waved her hand. At her gesture, a system window immediately appeared in front of Rachna.